actually Delhi Crime and Mirzapur were shot close to each other, and they are also two very different roles. Because Beena Tripathi was completely somebody who I'm not, and Neeti Singh was totally who I was in college at least. I'm just not into superhero films so much unless they're made by Christopher Nolan, and I'm not into films which are too violent. If the character's politics are not in sync with mine as a performer, it becomes even more interesting for me to play that, to be able to understand another mind, how it's wired.
So like I was telling our guest before we started, I became a fan of her as a person before becoming a fan of her as an actor. So I'm very excited for this interview. Hi Rasika, welcome to the Quint.
Thank you so much and so nice to meet you.
हम शुरुआत करते हैं आपके FTII डेज से. FTII में एज अ फिल्म स्टूडेंट आपका वो जर्नी कैसा था?
I think it was a very exceptional experience for me because I had I had not acted for a while before I went to FTI. I had just done theatre in college, and in school I had done like Christmas plays and all of that where I was always Mother Mary. So,
Typecast.
Yeah, typecast because I had long hair. So, and in college I had done some theatre, some very interesting theatre, but by the time I went to FTI, there had been about 2 years in between that I hadn't been on stage at all. And so it was a very frightening experience for me to even audition for FTI. When I did the entrance exam, it had some 3-4 components. एक written exam होता था, उसके बाद एक audition था जिसमें वो आपको एक piece भेजते थे, किसी classic का piece, और मेरा piece था from a J.M. Singe play. And then you had to pick one piece on your own which you wanted to perform. That was the second process, and the third was a 4-day workshop at FTI where they really grilled you. I remember जब मैं उस workshop के लिए गई थी, I hadn't acted for 2 years, और मुझे लगा कि I was so shy. We would be sitting in a group and people would say, okay, you get up and do this, and I would just be hiding behind somebody. I hope they don't pick me up. Because I was terrified. So it was for me, FTI was like starting from scratch. I just felt like I knew nothing. And I think that's a very good place to start any learning process from, where you accept yourself कि मुझे कुछ नहीं आता, अब मैं यहाँ सीखने आई हूँ. Of course, I'd studied a paper in film. At Sophia's, I had done a course called Social Communications Media, which had a paper in journalism, PR, advertising, and also one paper in film. And the lady who headed the department, Jeru Mullah, is a very passionate teacher. She was so passionate about teaching film that it automatically became one of the most important papers in that course. वो film studies का थोड़ा सा background था, लेकिन film making का कुछ background नहीं था, और acting तो मैं भूल चुकी थी. So it was a clean slate, and I arrived at FTI with a lot of enthusiasm, and I'd heard so many stories of this place which has an active history of dissent, and I'd heard that there's a wisdom tree कि उस wisdom tree के नीचे बैठो तो आप सिनेमा के बारे में सब कुछ जान जाते हो. It's one of those myths of and I was also excited कि जो physical space है, you've studied in Pune, so you know, the place where FTI is located, that physical space used to be Prabhat Studios, which is one of the first studios that Indian cinema had. And I just felt like being around that kind of history and that legacy would be really special. Yeah.
So clearly it worked out because you're a brilliant actor.
Yeah, some ghosts found their way inside.
That tree has definitely worked. At least there's myth confirming today that the FTI tree works. आपका बचपन जमशेदपुर में बीता था, right? If I'm not wrong. But living in India, it's impossible to escape Bollywood. So, as a child, how was Bollywood influencing you as just a person?
Just like any other family in India, like you said, but कई families ऐसी होती हैं जिनका सिनेमा उनकी ज़िंदगी का बहुत बड़ा हिस्सा होता है. हमारी family में वैसा नहीं था. My parents were not film buffs. My aunt is a huge film buff, and she had started a video lending library called Video Tracks. And they used to rent out video cassettes for people to watch, and I think at that time used to rent a video cassette in my childhood for 10 rupees, and you could keep it for a week, and you watched it in your VCR, and often the print used to be bad because it had been circulated around so much that by the time it came to you, it came with all these lines and it went zrrr, and you were trying to watch the film, and then you had this little liquid with which you would clean your
Yes,
VCR.
I have seen this liquid, yes.
So we did all those kinds of things to watch films. And so I think she was the true film buff in my family, and because of this video lending library and easy access to films, I ended up watching a lot of films. Going to the theaters was not a big part of my childhood. I think the first time I went to the theater was when I was in Chandigarh for छुट्टी, गर्मियों की छुट्टी में हम चंडीगढ़ जाया करते थे because my nana nani lived there, and my youngest aunt, who was like the school aunt who all the cousins loved and all that, जब भी लाइट चली जाती थी, और गर्मी के मौसम में जब चंडीगढ़ में लाइट जाती है तो आपको कोई नहीं बचा सकता. So this aunt would emerge and she would take all the cousins. We were some 8-9 cousins in one house, and हम सबको वो सिनेमा हॉल ले जाती थी कि यहाँ पे एटलीस्ट AC है, पॉपकॉर्न है, बच्चे चुप हो जाएंगे. That was my relationship with films in my childhood. बट बिल्कुल भी कोई कॉन्शियस अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं थी कि मुझे ये करना है. आई हैव हर्ड अ लॉट ऑफ एक्टर्स स्पीक, एंड बहुत लोग ये कहते हैं कि मैं बचपन से एक्टर बनना चाहती थी, ये मेरी ज़िंदगी का सपना था. मैंने तो ऐसे सपने देखे ही नहीं थे, मुझे पता भी नहीं था कि मैं ऐसे सपने देख सकती थी. सो या इट वाजंट अ पार्ट ऑफ माय लाइफ एट ऑल.
आप तो मैथ्स पढ़ रहे थे ना बीच में? फिर
मैं कॉलेज में दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में मैं मैथ्स पढ़ रही थी. पढ़ तो मैथ्स रही थी, लेकिन ध्यान थिएटर पे था. हाँ, बट अनफॉर्चुनेटली मैथ्स वाज सच अ टफ कोर्स. हमारे इतने सारे पेपर्स होते थे कि मैथ्स वाले फुल टाइम थिएटर कर ही नहीं पाते थे. इंग्लिश ऑनर्स वाले फुल टाइम थिएटर करते थे. सोशियोलॉजी वाले भी फुल टाइम थिएटर करते थे. सो इट वाज टफ फॉर मी टू मैनेज बोथ. And also I was in the hostel, so I had to maintain a certain percentage. I was from a small town कि वो percentage नहीं maintain हो तो निकाल देंगे, सड़क पर आ जाऊँगी. So I had all those things to navigate. But I remember every time I could, I would stay back in Delhi for holidays, and there used to be a bus M13 जो LSR के बाहर से निकलती थी और इंडिया हैबिटेट सेंटर जाती थी. और मैं इंडिया हैबिटेट सेंटर जाके बहुत प्लेस देखा करती थी. So I was very taken in by the idea of theatre, of the kind of culture that existed in Delhi University, where talent is really honed, appreciated and honed, in fact. So that I think that Kida started somewhere there maybe, but I just didn't have the confidence to take it on at that time. And I think just on a whim at some point I said चलो FTI में apply कर देते हैं.
But when I was doing research for this, I had made a note, I don't remember why. It just says loves Mr. India. I don't remember context. I don't remember if it's true.
It is true.
Okay, I'm glad. So what kind of films do you like watching?
I can tell you what I don't like watching, because like watching is a long list. I'm quite an interesting audience. I easily appreciate a lot of stuff. I'm just not into superhero films so much unless they're made by Christopher Nolan, and I'm not into films which are too violent. I love spy thrillers. I love rom-coms. Yeah, if I start watching something, I will finish it unless it's really bad.
That is the problem with me. Now when shows have like 6 or 7 seasons, कभी-कभी वो बीच में खराब हो जाता है.
But I will still watch it.
Yeah, I have to finish it.
Yeah, I have to finish
because I need to know कि आगे अब खत्म तो करना पड़ेगा. So
yeah.
that's a problem.
And somewhere I'm hooked in a strange way. I still want to know what happens to that person.
I guess you get invested with at least one character.
Yeah.
Like जब तक इसकी story खत्म नहीं होती है.
Yeah. I'm also really intrigued with films which deal with memory and how you choose to remember and how you choose to forget. That's, and how cinema, how you deal with it cinematically. I'm quite interested in that. So actually, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind combines these two things for me: that how cinema treats memories and it is a film about love. So that's why it's one of my favorite films.
One of my favorite short films of yours is The Broken Table.
Oh, really?
Because I love that short film, and I know Chutney is comparatively much more famous, but my favorite is The Broken Table, just because of the way it deals with that story of like these two people. The way it's written is so good, especially the aspect of memory. And I don't know if you watched Goldfish.
I have.
Made me cry.
Yeah, I howled through
it. It hurt me so much. I think the entire theater was sobbing.
Yeah.
So I understand.
It's a very beautiful film.
Yeah,
and I love the music of it.
Brilliant film. I understand what you love about the theme so much. Is that kind of a conscious thing that's in the back of your mind when you're signing projects also? Because The Broken Table, for example, then also the miniatures of...
Miniaturist of Junagadh.
Yes, the miniatures. That also deals with little bit of memory and also themes of loss.
It does actually. It deals with leaving a place that you've loved for a really long time. That's a very interesting question. I don't know. Definitely, it's not a conscious choice while choosing anything, but maybe it is a subconscious one which you've now brought into my consciousness.
Is it evident that I went to film school? Is my degree
See,
finally?
Talking to a film student is always hard. So, no, and thank you for pointing me to that. I will be more alert of that in the future, but not a conscious thought at all. In fact, I very often don't know why I say yes or no to a project, and it really sort of changes from week to week. I mean, the way I feel about myself today, and a script comes, so kind of dictates whether I say yes to it or no to it. It's that random, You're reading the script and suddenly somewhere you say, I want to do this, which is how it happened for Fairy Folk also. I remember when Karan came and he said it's an improvised film. I said, oh, sounds like fun, will be a fun thing to do. I was slightly wary because it's an indie film, and indie films are very exciting but exhausting for you physically, because you're sort of doubling up for an entire film crew. You're doing your own hair and makeup, you don't have any help with food, wood, anything, and you're really struggling to get by the day without collapsing somewhere. So I said, यार करण, इस स्टेज में उस समय के लिए ठीक था इंडी फिल्म करना, अब मुझे आदत नहीं रह गई है. I don't know if I have the energy for it, So that was my apprehension. But we started reading whatever Karan had written. It wasn't strictly scripted. There was just a rough structure to every scene. And I remember on page 19-20, I stopped and I said, I want to do this film.
But with Fairy Folk, for example, the theme of just gender and sexuality is very prevalent, considering, first of all, this being present in the film is genderless, right? That is also, I think, a theme that's there in Qissa, right? That's a very prevalent theme in that film as well. How was like the experience of doing Qissa as a film? Because I think it's a very important film in your career.
It's a very, very important film in my career as a performer, because that was the first time that I got the confidence from my directors and co-actors. Actually, they just respected me so much, in spite of the fact that I had a very small body of work to speak of, and they had so much more. Just because they gave me that attention and respect, I felt I could do my job well, And the setup of Qissa was ideal for a performer. It's very rare to find a director like Anup Singh Batla who gives you so much to work with without feeding you anything. He makes you feel that you came up with it on your own, and it was just so fascinating to do scenes with actors like Irfan and Tiska and Tilotma. It was a very, very special experience for me.
Coming to your OTT shows, you've done a lot of them, and all of them were very successful. Say Made in Heaven, Mirzapur, then Out of Love, I think, was around that same time.
Yes.
Mirzapur also released in 2018 as the same time as Qissa?
Qissa had released much earlier in 2015. Manto released in August 2018, and Mirzapur released right after that, and Delhi Crime released a few months after that. Yeah.
So
Manto, it was a good time.
It's a great time for just to be Rasika Dugal. So Manto में जो आपका character है and मिर्ज़ापुर में जो आपका character है, they're both again in the same themes of gender, but as characters वो बहुत अलग हैं एक दूसरे से.
Very.
So how did you kind of navigate that? Because they released in the same time, I'm assuming shoot भी आसपास ही हो रहा होगा?
No, actually, because that's what's strange, right? I was lucky they released quite close to each other, so I could sort of showcase the variety that I felt I was capable of. But they were shot at very different times. Because Manto had a film festival journey, it had premiered at Cannes and all of that. So they were shot, actually Delhi Crime and Mirzapur were shot close to each other, and they are also two very different roles. And I totally enjoyed doing that. I loved switching from Beena Tripathi to Neeti Singh, because Beena Tripathi was completely somebody who I'm not, and Neeti Singh was totally who I was in college at least. I was that sincere, ideal person who thought she could change the world, So there was one which I felt I could easily slip into, and somebody who I really understand, and there was this other which I felt I had to work towards, but very interesting because I didn't think that somebody would offer me a role like that.
I remember I was reading an interview with Taapsee Pannu recently, and she talked about soft power that she has as an actor. तो when you're choosing your roles, does it matter कि आपके कैरेक्टर का इम्पैक्ट क्या होगा ऑन योर ऑडियंस, एंड नॉट कि ओ इज माई कैरेक्टर मॉरल और नॉट, just is the way the character is being dealt with, is that kind of moral for you in that sense? Is that important?
Yes, so I mean, I have no problem playing a moral or amoral character. In fact, if the character's politics are not in sync with mine, as a performer, it becomes even more interesting for me to play that, to be able to understand another mind, how it's wired, you know, and that's a challenge for a performer, which I'm very happy to take on. But the overall politics of the project is important to me. And sometimes my nervousness to sign on to certain projects is that as an actor, you don't have complete control over that. You might read a script with a certain point of view, but the director might have something totally different in mind, and the final outcome, my worst nightmare would be if the final outcome was not in sync with my politics when I thought when I was reading it that it was, you know, and that's something that thankfully has not happened yet, and I hope it never does. It's like being intensely in love with something and then having a really rude breakup, you know, that's how I feel when I finish shoot. It's like I've given everything I had to something, and then suddenly I had to just leave it one day and go away and then say, okay, fine, now you do whatever you want with it.
It's like the thing that Roland Barthes says about death of the author, कि once the film is out there, your job is done. What are you going to do उसके बाद?
Yeah, so once I finish shooting, it's not like I have a say in the final product, at least in that case you do. Here it is, I'm trusting other people completely to do this and to make something of what I've given my heart and soul to.
As an actor, as a performer, just years, decades down the line, what kind of impact would you want to leave, or what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Have you thought about that?
I haven't actually. I'm not a दूरदर्शी. I'm a very, जो आज हो रहा है उसको अच्छे से कर लेते हैं, उसको कितने अच्छे से कर सकते हैं. I'm very preoccupied with all of that. Maybe people who leave a legacy do have to think of that. So maybe I should.
So maybe you leave an accidental legacy. It's
Yeah,
fine.
accidental legacy.
just improv legacy.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you so much for giving us time. This was very fun.
Thank you. I wish we had more time.
Next time.
Next time.
Next time 2 घंटे at least.
2 घंटे. चलो. Long form करेंगे.
Yeah, long form.
चलो.